There is a moment in adult life that almost nobody prepares you for. It doesn't happen when you're broke. It doesn't happen when you're struggling. It happens when you finally reach the number you once believed would fix everything. You open your bank app. You see the balance. You recognize the milestone. And instead of relief, your body stays tense. Sometimes there is nothing at all, just neutrality where calm was supposed to be. Other times, something more unsettling appears, a subtle wave of anxiety, a thought you didn't expect. Is this really enough? For years, that number existed in your imagination as protection. Proof that you were safe. Proof that you had escaped vulnerability. Proof that you would never again feel. And yet here you are, with the number present. And the emotional shift never arrived. This experience is deeply confusing, because logically, things improved. But the nervous system does not respond to logic. It responds to perceived threat. Your calculations can say, "You're okay," but your body can still whisper, "Not yet." And in that gap, between cognitive security and emotional security, is where most financial anxiety actually lives. For many adults, especially those who experienced instability at some point, layoffs, illness in the family, divorce, unpredictable caregivers, economic uncertainty, money stopped being just a resource. It became protection. It became control. It became identity repair. Sometimes, without awareness, it even became emotional regulation. When life once felt uncertain, money became the thing that restored order. So reaching a certain number wasn't only about financial strategy. It was about reclaiming power, which is why the moment the number stops calming you can feel so disorienting, because it exposes something unexpected. The number was never solving the whole problem. For some people, $20,000 is a milestone. For others, it feels like oxygen. But underneath that number is often an unspoken emotional sentence. If I have this, I will never feel helpless again. Helplessness is one of the most intolerable human emotions. It activates survival circuits. And when someone experiences helplessness early, financially or relationally, the nervous system stores that memory somatically. Not as thoughts, as sensation, tension, hypervigilance, anticipation of loss. So even when savings grow, the body keeps scanning, because the original wound was not numerical. It was experiential. This creates a quiet internal conflict. The spreadsheet says stability. The nervous system says prepare, and nobody teaches you how to reconcile those two realities. So many adults live with a persistent feeling of almost safe, close, but not fully there. Human beings adapt with remarkable speed. What once felt extraordinary becomes ordinary far faster than expected. Behavioral economics calls this hedonic adaptation, but in the context of money, adaptation affects safety perception more than happiness. The $20,000 that once felt life-changing gradually becomes bare minimum. Then $30,000 becomes the comfort line. Then $50,000, then more. Not because you are greedy, because the brain recalibrates what safe means. I call this security inflation. The number rises. The emotional state barely changes. You don't feel safer. You simply reset the baseline. Without awareness, this process can continue indefinitely. People spend years chasing thresholds that move every time they are reached, and each new level brings only temporary relief before anxiety returns. Imagine you lost $5,000 tomorrow. Not intellectually, emotionally. Would you experience inconvenience or panic? If your body reacts with panic, tight chest, racing thoughts, catastrophic projections, then the money is serving a deeper function. It is not just stored value, it is emotional stabilization. It is acting as a regulator for fear. And regulators that depend on external variables are inherently fragile, because fluctuations are inevitable. When money becomes the primary stabilizer, any change can feel like identity threat. Not because survival is at risk, but because survival is at risk, but because internal equilibrium is tied to the number. When peace depends on reaching a threshold, something subtle happens. The threshold moves. It expands with exposure, with lifestyle changes, with comparison, with future projections. You tell yourself, when I reach this number, I'll relax. But relaxation postponed repeatedly becomes unfamiliar. Security becomes a horizon. You walk toward it. It moves further away. And the more energy you invest chasing certainty, the less present you feel in your actual life. Ironically, the pursuit of safety can reduce the experience of safety. This is where psychological maturity enters the picture. Financial planning and nervous system regulation are not the same task. You can build emergency savings, income diversification, investment portfolios. But if emotional tolerance for uncertainty remains underdeveloped, anxiety persists. True security is less about accumulation and more about adaptability, the ability to respond, to recover, to reorient after disruption. Numbers help, but capacity stabilizes, and capacity lives inside the person, not the account. There is a distinction most people miss. Liquidity is access to resources. Resilience is the ability to adapt. You can possess liquidity and still avoid risk, still postpone decisions, still feel stuck. Resilience depends on something deeper, internal locus of control. The belief, developed through experience, that you can rebuild if necessary. That belief changes how money feels, because security becomes less about preservation and more about competence. Some individuals do not accumulate savings primarily for opportunity. They accumulate to avoid humiliation. The unspoken fear, I never want to depend on anyone again. This is not purely financial motivation. It is identity repair. Money becomes armor, and armor has weight. It protects, but it also restricts movement. When protection dominates, flexibility decreases. Life becomes oriented around preventing vulnerability rather than pursuing possibility. When uncertainty decreases, cortisol initially drops. But if the brain learns scarcity as a baseline environment, vigilance returns quickly. Neural pathways built through years of alertness do not disappear immediately when circumstances improve. So even with money present, the system keeps scanning. This is why almost safe can feel exhausting. You are functioning, you are progressing, but you are never fully at rest. Because rest requires the nervous system to trust stability. And trust develops slower than income. We talk frequently about overspending. We talk far less about overprotecting. Excessive saving can signal something subtle. Fear of loss outweighs pursuit of growth. Behavioral economics describes this as loss aversion. Loss carries roughly twice the psychological weight of gain. So people protect. They delay investments. They postpone decisions. They hesitate to take calculated opportunities. Gradually, protection becomes paralysis. Stability becomes rigidity. And rigidity eventually limits long-term expansion. A financially stable individual is not someone who never experiences fluctuations. It is someone who can tolerate them, someone who can endure temporary declines, separate emotion from data, make long-term decisions under uncertainty. That is psychological maturity applied to money, and it is rarer than high income. Because maturity is not measured by balances, it is measured by regulation. There often comes a moment when the number that once represented survival begins to feel insufficient. Many people interpret this as greed, but often it reflects identity evolution. You changed. Your perception of risk changed. Your perception of risk changed. Your sense of responsibility expanded. Your future projections widened. The old safety net no longer matches who you are becoming. This is not failure. It is growth interacting with memory. Scarcity identity says, I must protect what I have at all costs. Stability identity says, I can rebuild if necessary. The second feels calmer with less money than the first feels with more. Because the foundation is not numerical, it is self-trust. And self-trust transforms how uncertainty feels. Highly analytical individuals often understand probabilities clearly. They can calculate risk accurately and still feel unsafe. Because safety is not resolved cognitively, it is resolved emotionally. Understanding likelihood does not eliminate emotional memory. The brain can recognize low probability. The body can still anticipate danger. Knowledge is not embodiment. And embodiment requires experience, not reasoning alone. Instead of asking, is this enough? Ask, do I trust myself to recover? That question bypasses the account balance and goes directly to identity. If the answer is yes, $20,000 feels flexible. If the answer is no, even $200,000 can feel fragile. Because fragility lives in perception, not numbers. Seeing money in an account provides visible reassurance. But reassurance and competence are different. A cushion can sometimes mask avoided career changes, delayed decisions, unaddressed dissatisfaction, fear of movement. The money appears protective, but it may also be postponing growth. Security that prevents expansion eventually becomes limitation. Notice how often you check your balance. Is it strategic or soothing? For many people, it becomes a microdose of reassurance. like checking whether a door is locked, temporary calm. Then anxiety returns. Because the underlying tension was never about the number itself. It was about internal regulation. Overemphasis on protection can quietly reduce investment exposure, skill development, career experimentation, strategic risk-taking, short-term comfort increases, long-term growth slows, and stagnation eventually produces the instability that protection was meant to avoid. There is no natural endpoint for perceived security. The mind recalibrates continuously based on lifestyle exposure, social comparison, future uncertainty projection, media narratives, personal history. You believe you are chasing safety, but sometimes you are chasing status preservation or control over uncertainty. And control over uncertainty is impossible. Many people carry an implicit belief. Once I reach X, I will finally relax. But if relaxation is consistently postponed, the nervous system loses familiarity with calm. Urgency becomes normal. Even after reaching milestones, the body maintains alertness, because urgency became identity. If your income stopped today, what would frighten you most? Actual survival risk, or loss of position, status, or trajectory? The answer reveals what money is protecting psychologically. For many, it is not survival, it is identity. Savings matter, but autonomy matters more. Skills exceed stored capital, agency exceeds cushions, self-trust exceeds numbers. True financial peace does not come from eliminating uncertainty. It comes from increasing adaptability, from knowing, I may not control outcomes, but I can respond. That belief stabilizes more deeply than any account balance. Maybe this is the moment where the number stops being the hero of your story. Maybe the shift is not about growing it endlessly. Maybe it is about redefining what you expected it to do for you. Money can protect against events. It cannot fully protect against feelings. But emotional capacity can. The capacity to tolerate uncertainty without collapse, to navigate fluctuation without panic, to trust personal competence even when external variables change. That is a different form of wealth. Quieter, less visible, more durable. Eventually, the goal is not only to have enough. It is to feel steady even when numbers move, to experience security as internal orientation rather than external measurement. If this reflection resonated, this space exists for people who think deeply about life, identity, and money, not as a scoreboard, but as a mirror. Because the real transformation happens. The real transformation happens the moment you realize the number was never supposed to calm you forever. It was supposed to give you space to build something deeper. And that deeper thing is you.